I'm going to tell you as much as I can about project management in 45 minutes. It's not really enough. You can actually do a 2-year diploma in project management, and I quite often do a 2-day course. We're doing a 1-day course as part of our passport program that you can come on if you want to know a lot more. And as you probably know, it's collectible, so you can save up a number of days and get a certificate in management, collecting odd days. And the project management day is one of the ones that contributes to that. But anyway, 45 minutes to tell you my top 10 points about project management. And the format of these free talks we're doing, and do come to more than one, by the way, if you like this, come to more. The format is, I sort of just do my top 10 points on each subject. That's kind of what we're doing. So project management, we've got leadership coming up soon, and there's a list here, and I'll show you a list later of some of the other subjects that we've got. But before I do my first of my top 10, what is a project? Any offers, anybody? What is a project? You can do it.
It's got a defined start and end.
Yep, it's got a start and a finish. Yep. And with projects, you're not allowed to say the forbidden O word, which is ongoing. That's the forbidden O word. The O word is so bad that every time somebody says it, a kitten dies. I was allowed to say it once for illustration purposes, but after that, it must never be spoken, because projects must have a start and a finish, and all the tasks within the project, they have a start and a finish as well. So tasks can never be, what was the word again? Don't say it. So, yeah, so start and a finish. Anything else? They've got cost, quality, and time. All projects have a budget. They all have some sort of thing you're trying to achieve. They all have a time scale. But there's a third thing as well. So, for example, eating breakfast, is that a project? What do you think? You reckon it is? Well, it's got a start and a finish, and it's got a budget, I suppose, and a quality and a time. But I don't think breakfast is a project. But why not? No, but it does finish. No, it does finish.
It's a part of everyday life, isn't it?
Yeah, you've done it before. It's a regular thing. And I think, oh yes, there's that. That's the trouble with being filmed. Because then you click and you go, oh yeah, there's that. And a million presenters are going, I can't believe he didn't remember he had the 3 circles coming up. But anyway, don't worry about the camera. Are you worrying about the camera? I am. But the rest of you are probably fine. But yeah, I think the third essence of a project is that it's something you haven't done before. Because if you've done it before, it becomes a process. And on training courses, they always use the example, a cliched example, building a motorway bridge. But actually, I think that's almost a process for the people who build motorway bridges, because they've done it before. Unless it's a really unusual and difficult one. So, of course, it's worth planning your motorway bridge, but it's relatively easy, and you've probably got a process that you follow. It's either a very easy project, or it's a slightly tricky process, because it has variations. It's in that grey area. But a true project is something you haven't done before. And in fact, if you think about the word project, it's the same as the word project, which means to throw forwards from the Latin. And so the idea of projects really is that you're leaping forward into the unknown. You're doing something you've never done before. So what project management is trying to do is it's trying to plan and do something that you've never done before, to budget, to time, to quality, which is really difficult. But we can do it. We have a process. So my first tip is be really clear what you're trying to do and get it in writing. So if somebody just says, make me a really nice website, and you go, yeah, I'll do that, what's going to happen? If you just say, yeah, I'll make you a nice website, and you don't get it in writing, you just sort of say, I'll do it, and there's nothing defined, what's going to happen, do you suppose? Yeah, you've been there. They'll probably complain afterwards and go, is that it? Well, that's not what I expected. And they probably won't pay. You've probably been there. Yeah. And the other thing is they'll move the goalpost during. So halfway through they'll say, oh, can you just add this? Can you just add that? Whereas if you've got it in writing, and does anybody know what a PID is? Have you heard of a PID? It is a project initiation document. I love that. That's such a macho 3-letter abbreviation, isn't it? Project initiation document. It comes from PRINCE, which is the government's official project management methodology. And it's kind of caught on as the word for the starting document. But a PID is really just where you write down what the quality is you're going to get and what the budget is that you're going to spend and when it's going to be done by. And everybody agrees it and signs it. So the customer knows what they're getting, the project manager knows what they're supposed to be doing, everybody's happy. And if you don't, they'll move the goalpost during and they'll complain afterwards. But if you've got a PID, you can say, well, I'd love to do that extra thing you're asking for, but it wasn't in the PID. So I can do it, but it'll take longer and you'll have to pay more. So it gives you kind of an arguing tool. So project initiation document, absolutely correct. There's one other thing that's worth doing at the beginning, which is to have a kick-off meeting. And what that means is that if you've got several stakeholders involved who all want different things, how can you write your PID? So you could just take the plunge and write something anyway, but if you do that, they'll all complain it wasn't what they wanted. So what you do is you have a meeting with them all, and you say to them, right, you know, I'll do whatever you want. If you want the Rolls-Royce one, which will be marvellous but expensive, I can do that. Or if you want the very quick one that's not going to be very good, I can do that for you as well. But you tell me what you want. And if they all argue, you can say, well, you know, you can't have both of these, so you'll have to make up your mind about what you want. You might even want to bring them options and say, well, I've drawn up a couple of plans we could do, what do you think? But the main thing is to get them to buy into it at the start so they can't complain later. So that's what a kick-off meeting is about. Okay, so it's not the project manager's job to decide what the finished spec's going to be. It's just to chair that meeting, really, to get everybody together and to say, well, look, what do we want? And what if they say, well, look, just start anyway, and we'll worry about the detail later? Definitely don't start. You should say, no, I can't start, because I can't do my planning until I know what you want. So have a meeting, get it written down. Doesn't matter whether you want to call it a PID or not, but that's what people call them these days mostly. Okay? The tip 2 is to be assertive. Don't agree to something that's impossible. It is very tempting, if you're asked to do a virtually impossible project to a very short time scale, it's very tempting to go, yeah, well, I'll do that. And if you say yes, you'll be the hero to start with. And it'll be, good old Simon, he's doing this impossible project for us, what a guy. And then a few months later, it's, Simon's going a bit late on his project. And then by the end, it's, bloody Simon, he's useless, he's totally failed to deliver. So you go from the hero to the villain. So it's really important to say no at the beginning. And of course, you can't say no halfway through, can you? You can't say, I don't think I'm going to make this. It has to be at the start. And what often happens is that people are a bit vague at the beginning about whether they can do it. They say, well, I'll see what I can do, I'll try. And if you say to the customer, well, I'll see what I can do, what do they hear? They probably hear yes, don't they? Yeah. And if you then fail, you'll get blamed for failing. And is it fair that you get the blame for failing when all you said was, I'll see what I can do? Do you think it's fair? Yeah. I think it is. Because you made a noise that sounded like yes to the customer. That's it. So you absolutely must be assertive and say no. It'll be bad for you, but it's bad for them as well, of course. Because if you say yes to something impossible, they think they're going to get it, and they're not. And they have a nice, happy year of living in a fluffy world of denial, but in the end, they suddenly find out they're not going to get it. So it's better for everyone to know that you're not going to get it from the start. Now, you might be thinking, oh, but I'm not very assertive, and I don't like the sound of all of this. But the good news is, planning makes you stronger. So if you say, oh, I don't think I can do that by Christmas, that just sounds negative and miserable and kind of unprofessional as well. I don't think I can do it. But if you say, I've done a plan, and as you can see from my plan, I need till February, now you're being professional. Now you're being organised and efficient, aren't you? So the good news about the planning, which we're going to come to in a moment, is that it gives you the ability to say no from the start. You can say, well, I just can't do it. Now, what if you've got a boss who says, I don't care about your plan, I want it? And some bosses are like a big baby, aren't they? I don't care, I want it, I must have it by Christmas. And what are you supposed to do if you've got a boss like that? And I think the answer is to say, well, okay, I'll modify the plan. I'll spend another 10 grand on this bit, and I'll reduce the quality of this. I won't consult the public, I'll just go ahead and do it, or whatever. I won't do any research. And the boss goes, no, 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 you've got to do this, and you can't spend the 10 grand. And then you can say, well, okay, so which bit do you want me to miss out? If I can't miss that out, which bit do you want me to miss out? And the idea is to draw them in to looking at the plan. And then they'll go, yes, I see what you mean. And so, unfortunately, I think we're faced with the game of selling plans upwards to our bosses quite often. And I think that's a real shame, because really the bosses ought to want a plan. If you think about it, if you are a boss, why not ask for a plan? Because if you just say to somebody, you will do it, won't you? Tell me yes. And they go, oh, yes. What have you got? All you've got is a yes, a meaningless yes. And it'd be much more useful to get some sort of a reassurance they can actually do it. So it'd be much more sensible to say, can you bring me a plan of how you're going to do this? Because then you can look at the plan and decide whether you think it looks feasible or not. And you can also monitor along with the plan as they do the job, can't you? And you can see whether they're still keeping up with the plan or not. So it amazes me that bosses don't more often ask, can I see your plan? Do you have bosses that say, can I see your plan? Or do they just say, tell me you'll do it? Thinking back over the years, I don't think I can ever remember a boss asking to see my plan, which is sad. But of course, from now on, you can do that. So, planning makes you stronger if you're the project manager, and it's better if you're the boss as well. But don't agree to something that you can't deliver. Tip 3 of 10. So, having found out what they want, the first part of planning is to get a list of all of the tasks. Now, I don't know if you can remember my 3 circles. What were in my 3 circles again? Quality, cost, and time. Yeah. If you forget a task, which of the 3 circles will suffer, do you suppose, if you forget a task?
Time, and cost.
It'll take longer, yeah. It'll cost more than you thought as well, probably. In fact, almost certainly. You might have to reduce the quality in order to still finish on time. So it's going to mess up 2, possibly 3 of them. So we really do want to list the tasks, if possible. So how would you go about listing the tasks if it was you? You had to do this thing you'd never done before. How would you go about getting a list of all the tasks involved? What would you do? What do you do?
Provide their list of what their responsibilities.
Yeah. And you could ask them all about what they want and what they think's involved. What if they say, well, I don't know, I just want this job done. I don't know what's involved. How else could you do it? Because they may say that.
If you've done something before that's similar, you could.
Yes, you could. Look at history. You could adapt from previous ones. Yeah, so you could look at history. There might be something written down somewhere, or there might be something in somebody's head. And in fact, if you think about what experts are, they're people with history in their head, aren't they? So experts aren't necessarily clever, they're just old. In fact, they are. So you could find the oldest person and say, have you done this before, and what do we need to know about? But there are some other ways as well. I've got 3 ways on here. The first way is just to have a random brainstorm of ideas. We are allowed to say brainstorm again, by the way. I don't know if you know. But it was alleged to be banned. We had to say thought shower and board blasting, idea harvesting, and CGIGS as well, Creative Group Idea Generation Session. But it's been announced recently you're allowed to say brainstorm again. If you are going to have a brainstorm, by the way, you should involve your team. Just because you're the project manager doesn't mean you have to do it all on your own. And a brainstorm on your own is quite lonely. So involve the team. Why else should you involve the team?
Well, if it's something you're building, for example, and your team of people that are building it,
Yeah.
they'll be able to tell you exactly when things
Yeah.
how long things are going to take.
Yeah, so they're going to know more than you, probably. And even if you are the expert, they're bound to come up with something that you hadn't thought about. They'll all have their own individual areas of obsession. So, yeah. More people to blame, always an advantage. Yep. Yeah. And also, they will be more motivated. They'll have buy-in from the start. So even if your team are completely hopeless, involve them from the start. It'll make them happy. And they won't be hopeless. They'll probably surprise you and contribute some ideas. So absolutely, brainstorm with your team. We've got the asking an expert. But the second one on there is to draw some sort of structured tree diagram called a work breakdown structure. I'm hoping a picture will come up. No, it won't. But anyway, it's a tree diagram of tasks. So if you were, for example, if it was some big computer system, you might have hardware, software, installation, I don't know, training of people. And then with each bit, you could have the task. I'm actually going to go in the evening. I'm going to leave at about 6 p.m. I could, but I just wondered whether you could give me an estimate.